sad and deep voice. They say blood is thicker than water. But what happens when that very blood turns cold? When the hands that once held you steal the life your father built for you? This isn't just betrayal. It's a wound that never truly heals. Said, do you know what hurts the most? Not when strangers betray you, but when your own family breaks your trust. Sad. My name is Ava Reynolds, and my first memory is the sound of wind combing through our orchard like a careful hand. My father, Samuel Reynolds, said trees remember kindness. He'd pat the bark of a honeycrisp and whisper, "Easy now," as if talking to a skittish horse. When I was small, he'd lift me onto his shoulders, and the rows of apple trees looked like green cathedrals, leaves stained gold at sunset. Moved. Every fall he'd bring home paper bags that smelled like cold mornings and crushed leaves. He'd empty them on the kitchen table, apples bruised by life but sweet anyway, and say, "A bruise don't ruin the fruit, Ava. It just tells a story." That's how he spoke about our land too. Not like property, but a story, one told through sun and frost, aching backs and honest work, us. We lived outside Ashburn, Georgia, in a farmhouse the color of old cream. The porch sagged a little on the left, like a smile that had seen too much but refused to fade. After supper, Dad and I would sit out there with mugs of tea, counting crickets, breathing in cut grass, talking about nothing and everything. He'd say, "When I'm gone, the land is yours, baby girl. This soil paid for your shoes, taught you patience. Promise me you'll keep it alive." I promised, every time, like a vow stitched into the lining of my heart. Moved. Mom died when I was 10, so it was mostly just me and Dad. Uncle Caleb, Dad's younger brother, came by often. He wore nice boots that didn't look walked in and a grin that never touched his eyes. "You got big plans for this place?" he'd ask, pushing his hat back. Dad would smile. "Same plan as always. Grow what's honest, sell what's fair." Caleb would chuckle as if honest and fair were cute antiques you hang on a wall but never use. Pause. Years passed. I learned the orchard the way a piano player learns keys, by feel. I knew where the earth sank after heavy rain, and which trees bore sweet early, which sulked through spring, then exploded with fruit in September. I knew my father's cough before he did, the soft thunder of a storm that would not blow past, It started as a winter cold he couldn't shake. By March, his breaths were small coins he counted carefully. The doctor said phrases that sounded like closing doors. We brought the hospital home, pill bottles lined like white gravestones, a machine that beeped at night like a scared bird. Through it all, Dad kept taking me to the porch at sundown. He'd squeeze my hand and say, "Look at that light, Ava. Even the day don't leave without saying goodbye." One evening, as the sun dipped and the orchard made its soft green hush, he pulled a folded letter from his pocket. I wrote some things down. Wishes, the land, the house. "It's all meant for you. Don't let anybody confuse that." His voice shook, but his gaze didn't. People change when paper and money walk into the room. "Promise me you'll fight if you have to." I said I would. I thought a promise and a father's love could hold back any tide. Moved. We buried him under the old oak on the north line where the fence leans. The town came with casseroles and careful sentences. Caleb stood near the headstone, hat pressed to his chest, eyes shining the way glass shines. Bright, cold, hard. "We're family, Ava," he murmured, squeezing my shoulder. "I'll help with the paperwork." "You just grieve." Pause. Grief is a fog that looks like safety. I let him take folders, keys, envelopes. I signed what he put in front of me because my hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the world had lost its edges. I figured family was a bridge you could cross blind. For a few quiet weeks, I rose before dawn and walked the rows alone. I spoke to the trees because I didn't know how to speak to anyone else. I kept expecting Dad to step from behind a trunk, wipe his hands on his jeans, and say, "Well, we working or what?" The letter he'd given me, I kept it in a blue tin on the kitchen shelf. I read it at night like prayer. It said things that made my bones feel taller. "This land is yours. Grow what is honest. Trust your own eyes." I didn't know yet how badly I would need those words. Moved. A month later, a county envelope arrived, fat with finality. I slit it with a paring knife. The letter inside was official and airless. Acknowledgement of transfer. It listed parcel numbers I knew by heart, and a new owner's name I knew even better, Caleb J. Reynolds. Below, in tidy black halves, were two signatures, his and mine. Sad, I tasted metal. My signature looked perfect. Same looping R, same impatient flick on the Y. But I had never signed that page in my life. My breath ran out and wouldn't come back. I drove to the courthouse on legs that didn't feel attached. The clerk, polite as a paper cut, showed me a stapled packet. "You signed the quitclaim at Dawson and Lee. It's properly notarized." "I didn't," I said. My voice sounded new, like a stranger had borrowed it. She shrugged the way people shrug when their paycheck depends on not seeing too much. "There's a notary stamp, Ms. Reynolds." Pause. I left with copies that smelled like toner and loss. Halfway home, I pulled over by the river and cried until my ribs hurt. The world kept moving. Trucks hummed across the bridge. A dog barked. A child laughed on a bicycle. And I wanted to scream at it all to stop, just for a minute, and be as broken as I was. When the tears ran dry, I felt something colder settle in their place. Not rage, not yet. A clarity, like winter air. I drove to Caleb's place. He opened the door, smiling. "You look tired, kiddo. Sit. I'll make coffee." "Why is your name on my deed?" I asked. He didn't blink. "Because you signed it over." I didn't. He leaned back, put his boots on his desk, and studied his fingernails. "The world is paper, Ava. If the paper says the world is mine, then it is." That's when promise turned into purpose. Angry. I went first to Dawson and Lee. Their lobby smelled like lemon and victory. The receptionist wore a smile that had teeth. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, eyes already saying no. "I'm here about a forged quitclaim. We don't handle criminal—" "You handled mine." A partner appeared. A man the color of expensive wood ushered me into a conference room painted doubtful gray. "Ms. Reynolds, I understand your distress, but everything is in order. Here's the notary acknowledgement. Here's the witness signature. We fulfilled our duty. Where's your notary?" He folded his hands. "Unavailable." I laughed then, a sound without humor. Unavailable like can't be disturbed, or unavailable like learned what Caleb pays and remembered how to forget? He stood. "We're done here." Sad doors close softly in places like that. It's only later you hear the slam. I drove to the county recorder's office, asked for logs, stamps, camera footage. "We don't keep video that long," the clerk chirped, as if it had been years, not weeks. At Whitaker's notary, a sign read, "Closed for family emergency." The world had become a maze arranged by someone who already knew I'd never make it out. Pause. At home, the orchard felt like a friend I'd disappointed. I leaned my forehead to the kitchen window and whispered, "I'm trying." Then I took Dad's blue tin down and unfolded his letter. There was scribble at the bottom I'd never noticed. Ink faded like old sky. "Ava, if you ever doubt what's true, start with what doesn't hide. Dates, hands, ink." It sounded like a riddle. I read it again until the shape of an idea glimmered, moved. I went to Mrs. Alvarez at the public library because librarians are the last magicians left. We sat beneath a poster about truth in media. She listened without interrupting, then slid a stack toward me. Books on ink aging, notary law, and chain of title. "Paper doesn't lie," she said. "People do. Learn how paper tells on them." For days, I lived there, under cold fluorescence and the warm kindness of Mrs. Alvarez. I learned that genuine notary stamps have microtext, that laser printers leave patterns, that signatures are less about flourish than pressure, that some pens dry with oxygen and some with time. Facts became small stones I filled my pockets with. Angry, I hired Maya Chen, a handwriting expert from 3 towns over whose office looked like chaos had been alphabetized. She put the deed under a microscope, then clicked her tongue. "Whoever forged this practiced you. Same rhythm, wrong pressure on the downstrokes." See the hesitation here? That's someone tracing a memory, not making a mark. Maya ordered tests, thin layer chromatography to compare the ink on the notary day with ink from that month's receipts. Spectral analysis of the printer toner. Science started to say out loud what my heart had screamed since the envelope arrived. Still, science costs money. I sold my mother's locket, the one with a photo that always made me ache and smile in the same second. I sold the old truck Dad loved. I watched pieces of my past walk away so I could keep the ground beneath my feet. Sad. Meanwhile, Caleb put up no trespassing signs and hired a security guard who chewed toothpicks like they were keeping him alive. He waved at me sometimes, pity tucked between his teeth. Sunday folks at church learned to love me from a distance. The choir sang about mercy. Their eyes practiced avoiding mine. Isolation has a sound. The way greetings get shorter. The way doors click when you're near. Pause. One night, grief returned, wearing rage for a coat. I drove to the fence line and stared at the orchard. The wind carried the smell of wet bark and something like courage. I remembered Dad's joke. If a tree falls and no one hears, it still hits the ground. I said it out loud to make myself smile. It worked for a second, like a match in a cave. Moved. Then the phone rang. Mrs. Alvarez. You asked about county backups? There's an off-site microfilm archive in the basement we don't index publicly. It's old, dusty, and stubborn. Want to get dirty? We spent a Saturday in that basement with a machine that hummed like a tired bee. There it was, a ledger scan from the notary's book the week my deed was signed. The witness signature, Nate Cole, appeared on half the pages that day like a ghost doing favors for money. We pulled voter rolls, found a Nate Cole who worked at a car wash and didn't own a suit. When we asked him, his eyes skittered. Sometimes a man helps family, he said. Sometimes for a little something. He wouldn't give a statement, but the tremor in his hands did. Angry Maya called next. The notary stamp's microtext is off. It reads State of Georgia, small L instead of I. Counterfeit, and the ink on your signature was laid down 2 weeks after the date printed at the top. Whoever did this wanted speed and forgot chemistry. I built a binder that felt like a spine. Facts slotted in where faith had been. The weight of it steadied me. Sad. When I served Caleb papers, he laughed. You think a judge will care? Judges read paper, Ava. Guess who has the paper? He tapped the deed. You have paper, I said, but I have proof. He stopped smiling. Us. The night before the first hearing, I sat on the porch and pressed my palm to the railing, feeling grooves my father's hand had worn. The sky over the orchard glowed like a bruise. I whispered, I'm scared, Dad. The wind rose, leaves answering the way they do when you want to believe the world is kind. Emotional. Court is fluorescent lights and stale coffee and words that mean more than the sounds they make. Judge Baker wore the kind of patience that grows from watching people ruin themselves one document at a time. Caleb's attorney, polished, loud, spoke of properly executed instruments, clear intent, incompetence of a grieving heir. He invited contempt to our table and called it law. My attorney, Rosa Delgado, small and flinty, began with a photograph. Dad and me beneath that oak, his hand on my head, both of us laughing with our eyes closed. Intent, she said softly. This case is about intent and the lengths a man went to bury it. Quote. We laid out the story like a map. The letter from Dad. The notary ledger with Nate Cole's helpful ghost. The microtext error. Maya's pressure analysis. The ink that hadn't had time to be as old as the date claimed. The off-site microfilm nobody bothered to sanitize because they forgot libraries keep receipts the world ignores. Caleb tried to look bored. Boredom is hard work when your future is shivering. Angry. When Mr. Whitaker, the notary, took the stand, he arrived walking like shame had weight. I was asked to stamp a set that wasn't signed in my presence, he whispered. I was told it was for convenience. I shouldn't have. His eyes never found mine, but I forgave him anyway because I was tired of carrying everything. Caleb's lawyer objected, preened, performed, but the room had changed its weather. Pause. On the third day, Rosa slid across the judge's bench the time-stamped print logs from Dawson and Lee's office. Notice, Your Honor, the deed in question was printed at 7:42 p.m. on a day the firm closed at 5. And the system shows the document was requeued the next morning, after the recorded execution date. Paper telling on people, just like Dad said. Caleb took the stand only once. He tried charm. He tried a poor man's version of sorrow. He tried remembering details he'd never known. Truth is a patient animal. It let him tire himself out. Emotional. I broke once, on a bench outside, after a woman my mother's age told me I was brave. Brave feels like a coat someone lent you that doesn't fit, but keeps you warm anyway. I cried into it and then went back inside. When closing arguments ended, the judge shuffled his notes and looked at me. Not at the lawyer, at me. He said, Ms. Reynolds, sometimes the law is a fence and sometimes it's a gate. Today it will be the latter. He ruled slowly, words clean as water. The deed void. The notary acknowledgement invalid. Attorney's fees to be considered. Title quieted in my favor. Soft noise rushed the room. Whispers, chair legs sliding, a cough someone had been holding all day. I didn't hear most of it. My hands were around the feeling that had replaced fear. Not triumph, not even relief. Return. Like a song remembered after years. I walked out under a sky so blue it felt reckless. Rosa squeezed my shoulder. Go home, she said. Touch your trees. Moved home is a word that grows when you water it. The porch boards creaked hello. I stepped into the orchard and let the rose swallow me. Leaves clapped like polite applause. I put my cheek to the bark of the old Honeycrisp and felt it cool and alive beneath me. And for the first time since the morning my father died, I let myself imagine after. I rebuilt slowly. Replaced fence posts one by one, learned the names of new blights, painted the porch the color of second chances. Folks who had looked away found reasons to look back. Some sincere, some curious. I took what I could use and set down the rest. Forgiveness is not an open door. It's a window you crack for fresh air. Presnambi. Months later, I found Caleb in the grocery aisle. He smiled. Astonishing! The muscle memory of arrogance. No hard feelings? He asked. I thought of Dad's hands, of Mrs. Alvarez's basement, of Maya bent over a microscope, of Rosa's voice a scalpel. I thought of the night sky above the fence line when I almost gave up. Then I thought of the letter in the blue tin. Start with dates, hands, ink. No hard feelings, I said, just boundaries. I walked away lighter by the weight of an answer I didn't owe him. Emotional. Some evenings I still sit on the porch and talk to my father. I tell him the Honeycrisps had a good year, that the Macintoshes are moody as ever, that people still buy bruised fruit because it's sweet underneath. I tell him trust can be broken and rebuilt, though it never looks the same, like a cup mended with gold, seams shining brighter than the plain white it used to be. I tell him I kept my promise. Soft. And when the wind moves through the orchard just right, it sounds like a man laughing softly and saying, "Easy now. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Whispers of Truth. Like, share, and comment to support us. Your support means everything.